Alright, there's pasta base, and then there's baked ziti. So if you're looking for a comforting meal prep this week for lunch or for dinner, this baked ziti would definitely hit the spot. We're keeping it classic style today, but of course, we're making it macro friendly without compromising on the flavor, so let's jump into how to make it. Alright, we'll start with our pasta and we'll let this cook before setting it off to the side. Now, this is where my recipe slightly deviates from traditional baked ziti in that I'm actually using rigatoni today, which is more or less ziti's close cousin. Now, it's not my fault. I'd use ziti if I could, except my grocery store didn't have any, so whatever. But if all you have is rigatoni as well, don't sweat it. It'll taste the same and it'll be super delicious. Now, once all of our pasta is cooked, we'll burn our mouth off trying to taste one to make sure it's al dente. But then once that's good, we'll drain it and then set it off to the side before coming back to it later. Now we'll bring back the same pan here and then we'll crank it on medium-high heat. And then we'll add in our ground turkey. And I have 600 grams of 93.7 ground turkey that I'm using today. And we're just going to make our own little Italian seasoning by going in with 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of fennel seed, and I just crush mine up further with my knife, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of dried oregano, half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then to finish this off, 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Now we'll let this sit and caramelize a little bit, and then what I like to do to get those fine little bits of ground turkey is I'll use a potato masher to mince it up, and this is way easier than using a spatula, so if you have one, I would recommend using it, but if not, it's really okay. Now we'll give this another minute or so to cook. I really want that turkey to brown a little bit. That's where a lot of the flavor is, so we'll give it a second here. But once it's where we like it, we'll just scrape it around and then set it off to the side in a tray like so, or a bowl, whatever you have. And then we'll just set this off to the side before we come back to it later. Alright, with our turkey done, we'll bring our pan back because we need to sear some onions. So we'll add some oil to the pan again, and I have mine on medium heat. And then we'll just add in 225 grams of diced yellow onion. I'm gonna hit this with a pinch of salt. And then we'll just let the onion sweat out. And as this happens, we can start to scrape up some of that fond off the bottom of the pan, which will also add more flavor to the dish. But once our onions start to caramelize and they brown a little bit, we'll go in with 3 cloves of minced garlic and add that to the center like so. We'll hit this with a little bit of oil so it doesn't burn. And then we'll let the garlic toast for about a minute or so, or until it starts to brown and becomes fragrant. And once it starts to reach that stage, we can mix it all together like so. Perfect. Okay, now let's add in our tomato sauce. I've got 1100 grams of tomato puree that I'm just going to toss in here. We'll give this a nice little mix, and then we'll go in with about 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and then about 1 teaspoon of dried basil. And you can use fresh basil if you wanted. I just didn't feel like fishing it out later, so I didn't bother. But it would add some good flavor, so if you want to do it, go ahead. Now the next thing we'll do is add back in our ground turkey from earlier, and then give this a nice good mix as well. I'm going to let my sauce simmer now for about 5 to 10 minutes, just to let those flavors infuse and develop a little bit further and intensify, and then we'll come back to the dish here in a bit. And after about 5 to 10 minutes, my sauce is where I like it. We'll add back in our cooked pasta from earlier, fold all of that in, make sure everything's evenly distributed, and then we can get ready to bake this thing. So to an oil baking tray, I'm going to take about half of my pasta and sauce here and spread that on the bottom. Make sure we get an even layer of pasta across that tray. Next, we'll add in 100 grams of low-fat ricotta, and you can just see that I'm placing evenly spaced dollops across the pasta. As the pasta heats up, the ricotta will soften and it will spread a little bit, but not that much. So you want to make sure you spread it out as evenly as you can. Next, we'll take the rest of our pasta and sauce, and then we'll evenly spread this out over the top of our ricotta. Make sure we get a nice final layer at the top here. And from there, I'm going to take 70 grams of low moisture mozzarella, which you can see I just diced up, or you can buy the shredded kind if you prefer that, but just spread that evenly across the top as well. And then finally, we'll take 20 grams of Parmesan and spread that over the top as well to cap off all this cheesy goodness. Alright, now once that's where we like it, we can bake this bad boy. I'm going to throw mine in the oven at 475 for about 5 minutes or so, or until the cheese starts to melt and gets nicely caramelized. And after about 5 minutes or so of baking, plus another minute of broiling, this is what we get, and dog, look at that. How can you possibly be unenthused looking at that? Looks insanely tasty. I cannot wait to dig a fork into this thing. But alright, enough salivating. Before we eat it, we do need to prep it, so we'll go to that stage. Now I think all of you guys can handle this part of putting the pasta into each container. Obviously not very difficult. You can top it off with some fresh basil, or maybe a low-calorie pasta condiment that you guys like to use. But even if you top it off with nothing, your taste buds are not going to complain. I can promise you that. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the recipe. We're just trying to take super tasty, comforting foods and make them macro friendly for everyone. So if that's something you're interested in, hit that subscribe button because we'll be back with more recipes in the future.